Hi. So last night, February 9th, 2014, as a matter of fact, I was having a great evening and I was listening to the first part of a Radio Mysterioso live, which was really fun because Nick Redfern was on there as well as Greg. So, of course, they started talking about a lot of these recurring themes that many of us are interested in about the paranormal and UFOs. One of them being how come there is not really much interest in any type of unified theory, where instead of just, oh, what's about ghosts? Oh, what's about UFOs? Oh, what's about Bigfoot? So we're kind of looking at the paranormal and all these high strange things that do indeed tend to have many similar elements to them. How come we're not trying to look at the big picture and seeing if that gives us more clues about better answers, ways to go, possible understanding? And so they were complaining about that and how no one really writes much about this type of kind of situation, which is also a bummer. So it made me want to bring to your attention a book which actually concentrates on exactly that. Oh, I forgot to mention the other thing that they were talking about with Greg and Nick, which I thought was very interesting, was the whole question of, it's pretty obvious from a lot of these experiences that some of the content, it could be coming from inside people. Now, some people would prefer to just, kind of blow it all off and say, well, it's all just from, people's subconscious. But as Nick explained, and they were talking about some guy, I think he had an Italian name, but I didn't catch his name, saying that what convinced him was that that at least some of this is coming from outside of the people who are experiencing these things, is just people knowing things that they shouldn't know, names, date, places, whatever, and it's just popping up again and again where you see these little bits of information, and there's really no way people should know it or could have known it in any other way than in a paranormal way. So this, leads him to think that, okay, on a certain level, we're interacting during these experiences with something outside of us. So here's the book. I put it on mirrors. I hope you can. So hold your iPhone up to the mirror and look at this. It's Mind Monsters: Invaders from Inner Space by Jenny Randles. I was and it's 1990 was when this was published, and I got it at half price books for $4.98. You can see there on the thing, $4.98. This is a fantastic book for anyone who takes that kind of look at the paranormal, who's interested in, if you had that type of philosophy or theory about the paranormal, how would you investigate individual cases? And also, if you like weird stories, she's got those here too as well. I'm a big fan of Jenny Randles. I have been ever since, I think, the very early 80s when I first discovered one of her books. I think I was under the weather, and my mom and my sister got me some UFO books, and one of her books is in there. Anyway, I was very excited to see that Smiles Lewis was giving a talk on UFOs and consciousness up on his Anomaly Archives website. Great two-part talk. Recommend it highly, and he goes into Jenny Randles as well. Excellent. As an aside, she was one of the first people on the ground there with a background in journalism and science education when Rendlesham happened. And she didn't live that far away, and she and Dot Street and another woman, I apologize, forget her name, were the first people on the ground. So I would think anyone who's interested in that, it's definitely worth your time to track down her work on this. Anyway, so Mind Monsters. Basically, you can tell from the title, she is taking an overall look at everything from sky monsters, dragons, UFOs, pterodactyls, earth monsters, gnomes, all type of strange paranormal experiences. And then the mind, she's looking at, okay, how do all these things interact with our minds? Now, she addresses a whole bunch of different elements that could be interacting with. And she talks about Michael Persinger, his work, Paul Devereux, the Earth Lights theory. She gets a lot into and presents a lot of interesting information about transients, the idea that there's these window areas, so it's a particular area, but also that, well, as you see, for example, in the Mothman case, where you have things build up and build up, all these strange experiences, and then at a certain point there's a release, and then you don't have any more of these experiences for a while. You know, there's the ebb and flow, so it's kind of a space and time type of a thing. She goes a little bit, actually more a little bit into the whole fantasy-prone personality idea that certain people are either better able to perceive some of these instances or some of these energies, or that they have a different viewpoint on the world. Although, if I'm not mistaken, in her book, I think it's called Star Children, she goes into some research that was done to try and dig deeper into that whole fantasy-prone personality idea and see if it tended to be more prominent among people who had these type of experiences. And if I recall correctly, it didn't pan out. Anyway, so she's talking about people, places, and then a lot about kind of history, social history, culture history, mythology, the subconscious. Do we have like genetic history where, you know, our fear of big hairy monsters or, you know, evil dinosaurs trying to eat us is coming through and informing our experiences when we encounter these various energies. So it's fascinating from that respect. And so I thought I would just explain to you a couple of the things that she touches on. She is has been in the past over decades a very active feet on the ground type of researcher. So she has all these great stories, many of which she's been personally investigated. So this one that I think is just great for pointing out the fact that it looks very much as if there is outside information coming from whatever these energies may be. Let's see what page this is on, page 142. Okay, so let's see. Here's another excellent illustration of this process in operation. It was described by Frank Earp, who was a child of 15 at the time in 1966, playing with two friends beside a disused canal in Wallington near Nottingham. They were interested in the supernatural and looking for UFOs. So what happened, they were walking along this canal and they started to see kind of like this amorphous, slightly glowing blob, which is kind of cool. And then it started looking like maybe it was kind of moving towards them, so they're maybe not so cool. So they kind of course, the teenage boys, so you can't just like run screaming for your mother at that point. So they kind of started trotting, and then when they got near the house, Frank was there with his two friends. And he turned back to look at it, and so they all turned back to look at it and see what had happened. At that point, started the running, screaming for Ma. He did, and his friend did. One of his friends did, because they saw your basic, you know, BHM, as Keel calls him, a big hairy monster, red glowing eyes. That's enough for them. And their other friend was just kind of standing there bemused, and it turned out later that he'd just seen the blob. Now, if these two guys had, like, one had seen, I don't know, like a lizard person and one had seen a big hairy monster, that'd still be interesting. But to me, it's fascinating that both of these guys saw the same type of monster. Also, that is, you know, they were kind of looking out for UFOs. So even if they'd both seen a scary alien, you could put it, I think, more towards their own subconscious. But the big hairy monster thing, I don't know. Paul Devereux also speaks about possibly these earthlights being used to, or being used by various consciousness, or just themselves encoding certain information. And to me, this is a type of case that seems like there could be that. You could make an argument for that in this type of case. Let's see where this other one is that I wanted to speak about here. It's an instance which is kind of similar. There was a family living in Ohio on a ranch, and they started getting the full treatment, big hairy monsters, glowing eyes in the distance, teenage son falling into these weird stupors, especially when things start really hopping, flying saucers, strange odors, the whole thing. At one point they did try and take a photograph of this, you know, ape man Bigfoot thing that was pestering them, and lo and behold, the photograph did show something unusual, but it was just this strange glowing blob. So you have again the whole thing where you have you know, this kind of orb, light, whatever, anomalous thing being used to convey some type of information to the human brain, or some human brains, but not to the mechanical recording or to other human brains. Okay, so this is the last kind of case that I'll review for you here, give you whet your appetite for getting this book by Jenny Randles, Mind Monsters. Okay, so right now she's talking about some events which occurred in the mid-1970s in the Pennine, P-E-N-N-I-N-E mountains or area in Britain. Okay, so at this point you have a science fiction writer, Ian Watson, who is writing a delightful novel called Miracle Visitors. This novel concerned a teenage boy in Yorkshire who dredged images from his mind and somehow created pseudo-real creatures from them. So, okay, in Watson's story, one of the first apparitions to emerge from the youngster's mind and cavort over the Pennine landscape was a pterodactyl, which are these big flying dinosaurs. The big flying dinosaurs, what are we going to say, with the big beaks and their leathery wings, and they're very exciting looking. Okay, so, you know, science fiction, charming, fun, just type of thing you'd like to read about. Okay, so then things start to get a little weirder. Okay, a real, it was described in detail. Okay, so she talks about pterodactyls, and I guess they have certain anatomical characteristics which were accurately observed by a young man in Yorkshire who said, I had around the same time, he said, okay, I have actually seen one of these pterodactyls, and it was one of the interesting things about his sighting there again, which is instead of, you know, coming up with, they have these huge feet or something, he described them, you know, with small feet, and the way that their wings folded was accurate according to what we could find out from fossil records and that type of thing. So she says, a real pterodactyl in Yorkshire, how absurd, but it was described in detail by Paul Bennett, a remarkable young man from Bradford who in many respects lived through the experiences of the hero in Miracle Visitors during the same time that Watson, the science fiction writer, was penning his script. In his teenage years during the mid to late 70s, Paul experienced all manner of strange creatures, from hairy beasts to robots and angels to euphonauts. They were in his bedroom or on the Yorkshire moors. That sounds exciting. The case was extensively researched and documented mostly by investigator Nigel Watson, same last name as the guy who was writing this, but from a fictional perspective. Then Jenny says that she's met Paul herself, and I have little doubt he is sincere, even though that doesn't answer the question as to why his imaginative menagerie of earthbound fauna is so different from everybody else's. There's a point there. We will return to this case later, but for now, note the connections and coincidences that thread this story into some curious weave with Ian Watson's contemporary novel. They were not directly related. The novel is not based on the real experiences or vice versa. In fact, as in many other instances I have noted, they occurred side by side with a fictional writer conjuring up what he thinks to be a story out of his head at the same time as a highly imaginative person, and she puts in parentheses, gifted/hallucinating, choose your own word and it will probably be wrong, is experiencing the plot line within what he calls reality. Again, I'm quite sure this is an important clue. And what I like about Jenny is that she's not saying, well, you know, they're all hallucinating, you know, whatever. Oh, there was a TV show 15 years ago on one channel one time. They had monsters that look like this, so case closed. She talks about how there seems to be some type of interaction, and there does seem to be information not just coming from the individual human's conscious or the individual human's subconscious brain, but from somewhere outside of the individual human. Let's see, I think I found a good quote here, which kind of gives you a taste of her philosophy on this whole thing, and we'll wrap it up. Okay, so this should warn that the relationship between fact and fiction is not so much a sharp dividing line as a curious blend of mutual interaction. And that's one of the things that I like about her, is that she, you know, especially in this book, she doesn't rule out information flowing either way. She brings up the ways in which these things interact, and she also isn't kind of cherry picking, okay, this great case over here, which very neatly entirely just illustrates whatever my preconceived notion was before, what's all behind this. She's not afraid to put out strange cases where they have kind of like the frayed edges or the loose ends, where you're saying, we don't really know what's going on here, or this is really contradicting what we thought we figured out in this other case. She really wants to put it all out there on the table and let the facts and the experiences that people have take precedence over someone's theory. You know, try and take different theories, different ideas, see how do they fit with the data, and instead of just kind of tossing out the inconvenient, things here and there. So again, Mind Monsters, 1990. Invaders from Inner Space by Jenny Randles. You can tell it looked a lot it looked a lot less beat up when I bought it. Let's just put it that way. I think it's a great book. I'd encourage you to read it. Thank you very much again to Craig and Nick. It was a really fun show, and I'll be very excited when it gets up there on the web, on Radio Mysterioso website, so that I can listen to the rest of it. So thanks again for listening, and bye-bye.